Welcome to the Feakle Festival. You're all very welcome to what is an online digital version of the festival this year. We'd all, of course, obviously like to be meeting in person, and there's no doubt that music as a live expression is much better than anything you'll experience digitally. But then again, there are some things that can be done digitally that might not be as easily done in a live performance. So I thought on this occasion, to mark where we're at, that I might just kind of do a retrospective little journey through my sense and my experience of what I call East Clare music, so that I can at least, describe to you and express and explain how I've understood this music. I've grown up in that region. I just grew up like 5 or 6 miles up the road from feakle, in the parish of Kilnina, actually, the next parish over, and up the side of the mountain, Mahara, where you can see there's a big television TV antenna up there, and that's the town, and that's where I come from. So my father was obviously a big influence on me, and he was a kind of a standard bearer of the local tradition, I suppose would be a way to describe him. And he and my uncle Paddy Kenny were two very prominent musicians, I suppose, and their first recording that came out in 1959, I think, kind of brought the world of East Clare music into the wider world, where people actually heard this kind of lyricism and began to experience what we now understand and know to be the music of East Clare. So I'll play a couple of tunes from that just to kind of get us started on what that style is. So if you were to just kind of come and hear the music of East Clare and go around and hear all the different musicians, you'd start to hear somewhat different sounding things happening, for example, and that would make you wonder, well, what in fact is the East Clare style and what is it made up of? Well, it turns out that there are perhaps, I think, maybe a few elements in it. For example, like house dances were a big part of what musicians did. This is how you functioned socially in the environment. This was your contribution in a sense. So playing ran dances in houses with large central kitchens, or playing in old schoolhouses where I guess they just sat up on the windowsill and played from there. Those were all part of how they functioned, and some musicians enjoyed that more than others. I think my father liked doing that a lot, but in order to be good at that, one had to kind of focus on the rhythm and the pulse. So there was a form of the music that kind of was happening in East Clare that was like about fulfilling that function, and so it was kind of very hearty, kind of a little bit rugged, but it had this lift for dancing, and so some people imagine that that's what it is. So I'll give you a little sample of that, like of what that might sound like. Yeah. So that is kind of like music played with a kind of a rhythm pulse, I suppose, that I would say would be suitable for dancing, you know. And then you have, we'll say, the music of Paddy Canny and Martin Rochford, for example, like would be very prime examples of what I would refer to as a kind of a more lyrical kind of approach. And so you get things like this, you know. I mean, obviously that would be a little less suited for dancing than the other tune I played for you. But there were kind of two things happening simultaneously in the music, and probably not just in East Clare, but everywhere. There was kind of a reflective, nuanced version of music that was happening where the musicians themselves were really the audience, you know, and they were making it for other musicians in a way, or other aficionados, like, and which were, there were not huge numbers of them, but people who could really appreciate the subtle placement of a note, or the change of a note in a melody, or the value of a little ornamentation or variation. And so there were people like creating very nuanced and detailed versions of that, and I would put like Paddy Canny at the kind of pinnacle of that kind of idea, I think, in terms of how we played the music. And so in my own understanding of how I wanted to play this music, I felt like kind of, you know, combining these things, as it were, you know, bringing the rhythmic pulse and the nuanced delicacy, and trying to not make it into an either or kind of way of dealing with it. But so that's a part of how I understand East Clare music, and what I'm trying to make happen with that. But then there's also, a number of other musicians had a great influence on me. There was Joe Ban, who lived in Glendalee, and he used to play with a man called Bill Malley, and the two of them had a duet, and they were great for house dances. They would be playing, like, yeah, they think. So it was things like that, that they would be playing. The Strawberry Blossom was that tune there, and Joe used to like to play it. But then on when you got Joe privately, he tended to like be almost a kind of an East Clare version of Michael Russell in a way. He kind of embraced a kind of a simplicity and a sweetness, a music of kind of comfort to himself, and for anybody who could listen well enough and hear him, you could begin to pick up on this comfort, as it were. I mean, comfort is maybe not the best word to describe it, but it was soothing, it was calming, it was simple, it was direct, it was undisturbed by kind of too much ego, in the sense that like when you heard Joe playing like this, he was kind of almost in the privacy of his own home or something like that, where he just would be playing, just simple tunes and not adding any more than needed to be added to it, but the pure enjoyment and way in which he was able to engage with those tunes made them very interesting, and made his way of playing very interesting. I'm going to play a tune that Joe used to play, that I learned from him. It's one called The Breeches Full of Stitches. But as Joe used to like to describe music, like 'twas as sweet as a nut, he'd go, and he liked something. Anyway, I remember being out one night when there was a musician from Scotland or somewhere. I don't want to get into who it was, but Joe was listening to him, and I was sitting beside Joe, and Joe says to me, "Is he any good?" And I go, "Well, like, that's a difficult thing to answer." I said, "Oh, he's very good." "Right, yeah. Didn't our stuff die?" He goes. And I there was something in that statement. Now, I know it sounds like very prejudicial and judgmental kind of view of a wider world of music, but like Joe was really thinking about the function of music as he understood it, like, and what it was supposed to do for you and to you, So he knew there was a kind of a sweetness and a depth and a simplicity and a meaningfulness in the way in which the music could be played, something that went to a deeper place inside of you. Like, so virtuosity was nice, but it didn't always take you to that place. So somebody could be technically a great musician, and Joe might not be that impressed by it because it didn't actually speak in the language that he really understood and felt. So anyway, that's a bit of a detour there, but I'll play this tune, The Breeches Full of Stitches. Yeah, that's kind of pretty much as Joe played it, really. I mean, I suppose I might have changed a few things here and there over the years, but it's still basically, not a change of feeling or a change of interpretation. Really, it's kind of that's pretty much how I heard it from Joe. I mean, there were a huge amount of musicians around when I was growing up. There was like a lot of fiddle players, for example. There was Martin Rochford, Martin Woods from down Mount Shannon side, Francie Donlan, Vincent Griffin, Paddy Kenny, my father, Dr. Bill Lupnan. There were concertina players like young John Nocton, and of course Paddy Grogan, and there was Paddy Donoghue. There was a whole list of great people. I mentioned Bill Malley earlier on as well, and Joe Bann. So there was a very rich kind of tapestry of kind of almost everyone with their own style in different ways, but largely working out of the same kind of gene pool of either that rhythm of the pulse of the dance or that kind of lyricism. And so anyway, I had a lot to draw upon. But at the same time, like in other parts of the country, in the middle of the 20th century, I think, and earlier on, when the recordings of Michael Coleman and James Morrison and all the greats from that era became available, local people started imitating that stuff almost immediately, and the repertoire changed. And so I was often wondering, how much of this was influenced by that, and what was it like before that. So I remember asking my father one time, I said, well, what tunes did you play before you heard these recordings? And he had forgotten a good many of them. And then he started to remember a few. Like I asked him to do that. So I'm going to play a couple of reels that he kind of pulled out of his kind of childhood memory of the type of tune they were playing before all of this other music became part of the mix. So anyway, I was kind of interested in that idea when I was young. So. So those were some tunes that I recall my father playing for me when I was kind of pushing him to show me what they used to do, what tunes they were playing and how they were playing before all of that. So I became quite interested in the background of the music of East Clare and what were the tunes and how were they playing them. And so I mean, I could get a lot like from all these musicians, from Dr. Bill, Vincent Griffin, Paddy Canny, my father, Martin Rochford, Martin Woods, you name them, Francie Donlan. But then a musician appeared on the scene, brought by another flute player from Killanena, Jimmy Brodie, who was living up in Dublin. And young John Naughton had been living in Dublin most of his life. He was from Kilclarn, just up the road from feakle. And he had been an he was a concertina player first, and he took up the accordion, I think, for a while. But then he kind of just stopped playing for most of his life. And Jimmy at one stage then knew him in Dublin. I knew he used to play and decided to buy him a concertina just to get him started, just to, get him moving with this. And so he did. So then he brought John Naughton down around Clare, and there were house parties at our house and whatnot. And so young John was playing all these tunes that I'd never heard before, or versions of these tunes I'd never heard, because it was a bit like a bit of a time capsule, because he started playing the tunes from his childhood. And this for me was like this window into some other way of being, some other type of tune, some other way of playing that went on earlier. So I became very fascinated with the music of young John Naughton. Now when I say young John, like he just had that nickname. He was in his 70s or 80s when I got to know him really, and but he was still called young John. So I'm going to play a jig of John Naughton's. It's called The Ships in Full Sail, or at least it's his version of it. So I hope you like it. Here we go. That was a jig that John used to play quite a bit, and I loved what he did in the second half of the tune, and that's where the uniqueness come in, and it was almost as if like somebody could understand, what was important in the tune, and therefore brush over like irrelevancies, So it was like the broad swipe of that second half of the tune could be dee da 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 dee dee die dee idle dum deedle dum doodle deedle dum deedle daddle dum da deedle dum deedle dum dum dee idle da da da. That's the real beauty there, I think one of the reasons that East Clare music uh, survived and succeeded, I think, was first of all there was some critical mass of musicians, and there was enough good listeners out there to make these musicians appreciated. Now, it wasn't like widespread. It wasn't like everybody really got what was going on with this music, but there were enough. And an interesting thing that I never forgot was that some of these listeners had more of a sense, and sometimes a deeper sense than even some of the musicians themselves had, as to what this music was. And there were people like Danny Connors, I remember, who was this great listener, or Kathleen Maloney, uh, who was a great set dancer as well. She was a great listener of music. I remember this as a young fellow. Like, if she was in the audience and you started playing real music from your heart, she would like go all the way in there and kind of experience it. Mary McNamara's mother, Ita, and Andrew's mother, she was a remarkable listener of music as well, and had a very discerning kind of taste for that. So the listeners were important drivers as well of what was going on musically, because what has to happen sometimes is good listening draws good music out of people. I mean, the musician can pretty much pick up on the quality of the listening that's going on, and I'm not talking about like, from an auditory kind of sense, of just like how well they hear the details of what you're playing, but how well they're listening emotionally, and how tuned in they are to the feelings being expressed. And musicians pick up on that very easily. So I do think that there was a good part of that maybe is not talked about, but it was a significant part in my youth growing up, and having these great listeners as well as great musicians around, and it really helped me kind of, helps pull the music from you, and almost any musician will tell you that when there's good listening, there's going to be good music, and so it's a kind of a two-way street that unfortunately I'm not able to experience right now as I talk straight to camera. So I really do miss that experience of being in person with you, and being able to kind of have that connection, and to feel the room, and to feel what it's like on a Friday night in the church in Feakle. Has always been a very special feeling for me. Anyway, I'm probably talking too much, so I'll play a few more tunes. I'll play two jigs from that record of my father and Paddy Kenny, which also had another fine flute player, Peter O'Loughlin, and a piano player, Bridie Lafferty. So anyway, here we go. I'm going to leave you with three reels that are kind of famous around the world, but they have three East Clare names to them. I'll play the Maids of feakle, and I'll play the Humours of Scariff, and the Humours of Tulla. And so that will kind of, that's the triangle of the three main towns of Northeast Clare, I suppose, Feakle, Tulla and Scariff. And until we can all meet in person again, very good luck to you, and thank you for tuning in to the Feakle Festival online. And you know, there's a big welcome for you there. You know, we're very proud of our music, and very, I think, very proud to see so many people coming from so many places to enjoy the scenery in East Clare, to enjoy the hospitality and the music and the camaraderie. So we look forward to getting back to that again pretty soon. So here we go with the Maids of feakle, the Humours of Scariff, and the Humours of Tulla.